just kind of an opportunity for us to kind of put some of the ideas from the conference into practice. And really, we've been focused on like prototypes. And sometimes we get code, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we end up with poster board and foam and glue. And this is the idea, it's the concept. All right. So to briefly kind of give you, so we did City Camp Raleigh for about 2 years. And then we saw an opportunity to grow. And we were like, oh, the next natural evolution was, well, let's make City Camp Triangle, right? Let's make it regional. And then we actually started thinking about it. I was like, well, actually, let's just kind of, there's a lot of other things happening around the state. Let's just take the whole state over. Let's just do City Camp NC and grab the bull by the horns and let's just make it happen. So we evolved our branding and now included the entire state. And I'll show you a map here in a moment. So, so we rebranded something like this because we didn't want to be red or blue. Anyway, so that was a bad political joke. And so you can see the civic hacking scene in North Carolina is actually pretty thriving. So if you're not familiar with Code for America, it's a nonprofit out of San Francisco, California, and they're focused on actually focused on bringing open source to local cities, and now they're broadening some of that. Anyway, one of their premier programs is the Brigade program, where they support volunteers like myself who are doing civic hacking in their local cities. We've got in the triangle, we actually have 3. We have Code for Raleigh, Code for Durham, Code for Cary. And then you can see throughout the state, we've got a couple other ones coming up: Greensboro, Charlotte, and Asheville. And so this is kind of us kind of seeing the vision of, hey, there's other cities in North Carolina that are doing this. Let's try to capture them together. And really, the idea of City Camp North Carolina, kind of building on this ecosystem, is to be kind of the gathering of the tribes. Let's bring everyone together, much like this event, who's doing this in the state, and talk about best practices, and let's figure out what projects we can work on together. Because I think really, ideally, our coding practice is we don't just build locally, we build for locally, right? So we don't just build for our city, we build for the state. So that if there was one day, if we had ubiquitous open data across all 100 counties in North Carolina, that any application we build would be able to bring in that data and have it available to citizens. So I've been doing this for a couple of years, and so I've seen some best practices and seen things that work and seen things that haven't worked. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the civic hack models for civic hacking. And I think more importantly, the reason why civic hacking works, and I'm probably preaching to the choir, is because you have active participating people solving problems that they care about, right? And that's kind of where that passion comes back into play. So the first one is kind of greenfield, or what I call greenfield. We can play with the words, it really doesn't matter to me. This is kind of like a brand new project, right? So there's some great benefits to this, right? It's the shiny new object. Everyone wants to work on the new project. Hey, let's go over here. Everyone gravitates towards it. It's great for students, or great for learners, people that want to kind of need a safe place to learn how to code, or a safe place to practice that. The big challenges with this is sustainability, right? It's getting momentum, keeping it going, making it into a project. But it's necessary if we want to have, explore. And so an example of this from Raleigh, we actually called our Greenway, I think our second city camp. So the pitch went like this: it was a mom who had like 2 kids, and she used our Greenway system in Raleigh, which is our multi-purpose path system that connects all of our parks together. It's got something like 130 miles of trails. And so she gets up in front of the Greenway and goes, I love taking my kids up the Greenway, except when I get to the end of the trail, there's no signs. I don't know which way to go. I don't know if it's continue. I don't know if the next one's a block away or if it's a mile away. And so these really passionate people came together and built this Our Greenway app. We literally had a prototype within 24 hours. They won the city camp that year. And they brought in open data from the city. They brought in open GIS maps from the city. And they basically just created this application that highlights where you are and where the greenways are, and kind of let you know how to navigate that. It's been very successful. So this is an idea of a new project that came out of city camp that actually has been downloaded several thousand times. It's actually somewhat a city, meaning they actually listed on their website as something citizens could use. All right, the second case is something reuse or clone project, right? So this is kind of core to the open source model itself. This is taking a project and applying it to a different thing, right? So this is kind of, oh, I actually have a note here, and this is very similar to like the legal system, right? The legal system is built on case study after case study after case study. So you guys have one of the oldest forms of open source out there. So let me just walk you through an example of this. Has anyone heard of the Adopta application? Couple folks, okay. So Adopta started in Boston. And the use case was it snows a lot in Boston, and they have fire hydrants, and when they get covered in snow and they get frozen, they're really not useful. And literally, the city doesn't have enough manpower, womanpower, to go out there and clear out the fire hydrants. So much like we have other programs here, at least in the U.S., you can adopt a stream or adopt a highway, right? You're going out, so-and-so has adopted this highway. They go out like once a quarter or so and clean up trash and litter. So they said, hey, we know where all the fire hydrants are. Let's put them on a map. And let's see, citizens happens, the green ones, citizens volunteer to go out after they get notified, basically after it snows, to go and clean up fire hydrants. Which is really cool. But that's a kind of a very, a lot of different. So because the source code is open source and modifiable, the city of Seattle took this and applied it to storm drains. Apparently it rains a lot in Seattle, right? I think that's some folks here, right? So leaves and sticks and things kind of clog up some of the storm drains. So they did the same thing. Citizens go and adopt storm drains, and they just go out there with their broom and their gloves and they clean up after it. This goes all the way out to Honolulu. Honolulu applied this to something called Adopt the Tsunami Siren. So they do monthly testing of the tsunami siren, something very critical if you live on an island and there's an earthquake that causes a tsunami. People steal the batteries out of these sirens because they can cash them in for cash. And cash them in for some sort of value. To actually help with the testing. They get a monthly test and they kind of respond, say, yes, I heard it, yes, it was whatever the test is, like 3 things they have to check off. All right, so we're talking about why in this after lunch, I thought we'd just have a brief moment with Aaron. This is my family hiking. I saw an opportunity to bring this project to Raleigh, and literally it was going to be the traditional pen and paper, it was adopt a bus shelter. So the city was launching this new program. Hey, citizens can go adopt bus shelters. Why in the world would anyone want to adopt a bus shelter? They basically kind of keep it tidy, make sure if someone does some graffiti on it, they can report it. And they basically help keep it clean on a monthly basis. And so the way that the project was going to work was someone has to call up someone from the city and say, hi, adopt bus shelter number. I'm so sorry, that's not another one. Well, no, because there's not another one close to my house. I wish I had a map to see this, right? And so basically what we did is we weren't even a brigade at the time. We took the volunteers that were organizing the city camp, went to the city, went to the public utilities folks, found the right stakeholders, and pitched it to them. And they said, yeah, we'd love to do this. And so we implemented kind of the Adopta project for bus shelters. That's really cool. So you can see Adopta has kind of spread across the United States. All right, and the third one, the third model I want to talk about is what I call augmentation. And while I don't have some concrete examples of this right now, I think this has a lot of potential. So the idea of augmentation is that someone from the city, the county, or some sort of government agency actually owns the project. And so they have a project leader. And what you do is you actually enlist citizen volunteers to participate in that project. So this could be someone coming from Raleigh or the city of New York, coming to one of our local brigade meetups, saying, hey, I've got a list of all these things I'm going to do for X project, and I'd like to get help out. There's a lot of people out there time coding, kind of coding for good. It's just they may not know the right project, but we may not be able to match the JavaScript developers to the right project, or the Ruby developers to the right project. And so I think in this model, because the government's owning the code, we actually have the person that's really passionate about it, and they own it, and they can go out and they can help make that to-do list. So where I saw this happening, the city of Raleigh was transitioning from kind of their open data portal version 1.0 to version 2.0. And so they came to our brigade and they said, hey, we've got about 250 year help. We need your help with metadata. So all these data sets were just like not really labeled very well. They were like whatever the city person named them. Budget 515, 2015, but not very helpful. So literally in about 2 hours, sanitized from a metadata perspective, 250 data sets at our meetup. And so I kind of saw this happen. I was like, man, this could be really powerful. What if government agencies could reach out to citizen coders and ask them to participate in the project? And so, I really, if you see this happening, like, let me know, because I want to find some concrete examples of this, and I want to put this into practice, because I think it has some large benefits. part from a lawyer perspective, please, because if it's all living on GitHub, it's all open source, we should be covered by all the legalese, I'm hoping. All right, so anyways, kind of wrap things up here. In my experience, I'm seeing a lot of positive citizen impact on open government and open data. And so, but what I've discovered that it's all about partnerships, right? We're not hacking the system by going around it because we don't like it. We're actually partnering with the right people, the right stakeholders, and kind of like arm in arm trying to figure out like the best way to do it. There's a lot of smart people that work for government. It's just a lot of times they're working with handcuffs or just working with layers of bureaucracy. And they don't have the opportunities to kind of come out and participate in the way that they would want to. So by having kind of these volunteer civic groups, civic hacking groups out there, and bringing in some of these government folks, we're really kind of not only engaging them, but giving them kind of a new breath for life, new inspiration for their kids. So I'm going to end on a quote by someone named Margaret Mead, and they said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful could change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that has." So I feel like that's what we're doing, right? This is a pretty small group of people. You change the world. And so what I want to wrap up with is basically all this experience that I've gone through the last few years inspired me to write a book. It's called Open City. It's available online. It's a free download. So until I'm not in sales, I'm not making money off this book. I wrote it because people kept asking me, "How did you do this traveling? What did you do?" So I wrote it down. It's available for you guys. I've got a couple copies here if you are interested. So there's actually physical copies of this available. But to give you the kind of the highlights, right? So I talk about 5 elements of open source city, and I talk about kind of the culture, participation. So luckily for us at Raleigh, we have kind of a strong culture that is already understands that the open source model, open source philosophy. So kind of we didn't have to translate that. Where I think a lot of other cities or cultures and cities would have a little bit of difficulty with that. The government policy, because a couple of years ago it was all about, hey, let's do the government policy, and then kind of the data policy followed. Now I'm seeing that, and for each of those, solution as part of that RFP. And in the book, I actually talk about RFPs in the respect of partnerships. So I see this huge gap between kind of urban and rural, where you see a lot of urban cities are able to have the technology skills and have the skill sets to actually use this stuff. Well, what about the other rural areas that don't have that kind of resource? So the request for partnership in my head would be those rural counties coming together and pooling their resources, meaning they're going to have to give up some of their power, but if the end goal is to kind of help the citizens, then that shouldn't be a huge issue. And then the last kind of 2 things I talk about are kind of supporting user group and conferences, kind of like this. And then if you want to get the attention of any elected official, you can ring your little economic development bell. Hey, if we do this civic hacking stuff, we could actually create jobs, or there could be a startup that comes out of this. So there's different opportunities for that to come out. And so with that, I'll just leave you with, I hope you've learned something new today, but I also hope that you can discover your passion and you can make great partnerships with your communities. And so I hope that you'll help me improve the citizen experience together. So thank you. Any business presentation. So this is my obligatory cat photo. All my details can be found online, and my slides are already posted on GitHub. So if you go to my GitHub page, you'll find the slides there in open format. All right, it's blockchain time. So team blockchain, big blockchain. Yeah, let me go.
There's 3 or 4, right?
Check, check, check.
Okay, now this is the new camera person.
Okay.
Do you mind?
How do I do? Okay, so I'm gonna do this. Oh, no. I'm the new camera person, but I need to. So give me a quick introduction to what I need to do. I just need to hold it up, right? And drop it up. Right?
Oh,
okay. I'm gonna put my chair here. That's good, right?
Yo. So like it works a little bit like this, but the angle is like doesn't like there's no angle that works. If you maybe jam something in it or just
Here, do you want to scoot around here so that I'm not cutting you off?
I'm not
Oh, I see. That is it.
or people do slides.
Check. Check, check. Check, check. Check. Check, check, check. You look good. I can just pass this here. Check. Check, check, check.
Chili, we get.
Okay, I guess we're live. I guess we're live.
So, do you mind if I could put it on that chair? Is that
No,
okay?
it's okay. You get on.
Yeah. There's a little back cord right there.
It's great to see everybody here. My name's Tom Brook. I'm one of your organizers, actually, and I've been working with Bill Jameson and Shannon here. And it's just awesome to see all you people here coming from all over the world. I'd just like to say thank you. This is an exciting event. The amount of energy in this room, I mean, you just tell it, everybody just talking for you in a corner and just really go through the number of ideas. I think this is the type of place where things can really happen and it can really have a reflection in the legal community, and hopefully we can go back, change our individual communities. So thank you very much for coming. This is the blockchain channel. Now we're going into a section this afternoon where we're going to look at more the technical areas of where we're hacking the law. And I think blockchain is really an area where the law, in effect, it's famously said, code is law and law is code. Law is code. And I think this is a place where that can happen. So I'm excited to go into this. I assume I've been talking to Hannah back and forth about what I can see. I'm not going to really ask for a show of hands. I've seen everybody, since this is a legal tech group, you're all somewhat familiar with the blockchain, maybe you're not. The name of my presentation was Basil wanted to change my cabinet is blockchain smart contracts. And there's a lot of buzz, hype about this area of the law and it's going to take over the world and everything's going to be in blockchain. And hopefully after you listen to our panel here, you'll be able to see a little bit more of the reality of the situation. And I love the term smart contracts. Casey Coleman with Harris Industries famously says that what we're talking about is not really smart and it's not really contracts. So that seems to fit perfectly with what we're going with. I think in its essence, though, and I am going to go into a very short introduction, a blockchain is somewhat akin to a database, but the key idea behind it is it's a distributed, which means whatever code you put on the blockchain is shared. It's like the old idea, remember Napster, way back here in the ideas of Napster. You put something on Napster and it goes through all of the computers in the network. The innovation with the blockchain was the ability to keep all those distributed computers in sync. And also, another thing, a blockchain provides a record, a mutable record. What you put on the blockchain, you can always see it there. It promotes transparency. Those two things basically put together have created a revolution. I think it's going to have a profound effect on law. I think it's going to change basically everything. And also, I think it's going to change computing. If you're running a distributed application on a blockchain, that's probably not the most efficient thing. I think we're just in the very early stages of the technology. I said there's a lot of hype in this industry, but I think I'm really excited that we got this panel together because we got a group here that I believe really shows the reality, a group that's really working in making the blockchain real. First, we got Mike Wheeler here. He's with Consensus. They're right here in Brooklyn, right around the corner. I don't know, I see it's around the corner. I have no idea about Brooklyn. It may be 20 miles away. Anyway, it's a lot closer than that. He works with Consensus. Consensus, I think, at least from my view, is an Ethereum-based company that really work with Ethereum. You've heard of Bitcoin, which is probably the first big blockchain application. I think Ethereum is the next thing. It's a large distributed network. Consensus is doing a lot of leading work. They've got some nice toolkits to make Ethereum easy to work with. They've got a lot of innovative applications. I think there's even one about power here in Brooklyn or something like that. And so that's one group that's not really a lot of hype. They're actually doing something. From the academic side, we got Desmond Greenwood here. And I think you heard of Desmond Greenwood. He's a legal hacker from way back. And he's with the MIT, legal computational lab.
We just call law.MIT.edu.
Law.MIT.edu. I guess he's our academic person here, but he's also got an amazing amount of ideas. And so he's going to give you a little bit of the academic view and a lot of ideas. We've got two people here from Harris Industries. Preston Byrne, who is the vice president of Harris, maybe co-founder too, I believe. And Nina Kilbride, who's the developer, lawyer on Harris Industries. In Harris Industries, I think niche is maybe a little bit different. They work on the blockchain. They don't have to work with Ethereum. Their ideas, we got platforms that work with your blockchain, whether it's Ethereum, Tendermint, Bitcoin, or whatever. They're just trying to be the toolkit with it. And they also, both Nina and Preston are lawyers. Casey Coleman, the founder and CEO of the company, is a lawyer. And I think Preston said he has 6 lawyers. 5 or 6 now. I think Harris is really the company that's working on putting the law on blockchain law. They're working hard to find a way to make commercial contracts and things like that work. And also, they're the ones that are a little bit able, looking at area where you have maybe what's permission blockchain, where you get your parties together and you use your own blockchain and don't necessarily depend on the area. And what I'm going to do for just the presentation, I'm going to allow each of you 3 introductions beyond what I've said, where they can talk about a good example what they're doing, what their company is doing, or in the case of that's what MIT is doing, and just a little bit of more reality. And then we're going to go through three general questions about the use of the blockchain to try to make it real. We hope, I know we've got limited time here, we hope we'll have a little bit of time left for some audience questions. So I'll turn it to Mike first.
Yeah, so as mentioned, Michael Wheeler, Consensus here in Brooklyn. Consensus is a venture production firm focused on building decentralized applications, primarily in the Ethereum blockchain, but you know, blockchains in general. But yeah, it's founded by Joe Lubin, who was one of the founders of Ethereum. His mission is to build out kind of the building blocks that we can put together an ecosystem in the Ethereum blockchain to build with. Consensus is now about 100 people. It's growing quite rapidly. We have a couple of different pillars in the company. One is an enterprise focus, so we do enterprise consulting. As you can imagine, all the banks and financial services, consulting, healthcare, music industry, all the different verticals are kind of exploratory right now. Much in the same way 20 years ago, companies came across this thing called the internet, and they said, okay, we need a strategy, we need to figure out how to implement the internet. That's very much where we are in the blockchain space today. Companies are trying to understand what this all means. So we've got that consulting side. Consensus also has products that we're building, some very core fundamental products like identity services, development environments, tools, blockchain explorers, things like that that are really core wallets, that are core features that you need to kind of construct more rich applications. So we're kind of really at the beginning stages of building out that ecosystem.
Thank you. I'm Des Braidwood, and I'm from law.MIT.edu, and I think I'm on the panel to talk about some of the research that we've been pursuing. MIT's been university that has shown very good leadership and support for Bitcoin, for blockchain technologies, for because of what they represent and the capabilities they have. Once you tune the technology to business and legal requirements and expectations, they can be quite powerful and transform. So part of what we're exploring is a little bit over the horizon. And one of the, with respect to law, one project we just launched a few days ago is on law.chain.org. And that is a prototyping effort to test whether blockchain's immutable record capability can be used for legal requirements that basically currently we would meet by using Iron Mountain or an archivist business in some way, or potentially if your business has many different locations, you might distribute copies of the records. All not bad, best we could do. But one of the great things that blockchain does is there's a copy of the entire ledger of blockchain in every running instance. It's massively distributed because the ledger is text file. It's actually not that big to have a copy of every transaction downloaded along with the code. Not as big as some movies I've downloaded. And so we're looking at using one thing would be some statutes. Many people here, I know you've heard from Ben Kalos and others, are interested in putting statutes and regulations online, the authoritative version. However, to have the authoritative version online requires the ability to demonstrate to a high degree of confidence that that record is the record that was enacted by the legislature or the agency. So legal publishers are good at that. They have procedures and they've been able to do that. And currently that's really the state of art. So the laws that you see on websites for cities, states, federal agencies, there's always a disclaimer. This is not the authoritative record. There may be errors. You cannot enter into evidence as part of litigating a case. It's just not real. You can't depend upon it. That's not good. So one thing that we want to test is what could we put a hash, basically a digest of the record of a law or an amendment to a law onto a blockchain. answer is yes. Now what you have is a publicly verifiable global archive system where anybody anywhere could demonstrate at no cost that a given record, say on the agency website, is the statute regulating this or that thing as enacted at that time. And in Vermont, people think this is such a neat function that they've changed the rules of evidence now by statute, so that self-authenticating. So information on a blockchain can be self-authenticating. It's similar to like the weather on a New York Times report or that type of thing. So that's one thing that we're going to look at. So that if that's successful, you can imagine all that's authoritative being accessible. REST interfaces, you can feed into apps and services, very findable. It also creates a public format for analytics and for other workflow. The other thing I'll say quickly is we're looking at using the blockchain as a ledger for entities that could be completely automated. So we're working on an automated financial institution prototype now for credit unions, where we think that the shared ledger that's required by federal regulators as part of their charter could be in the form of a blockchain, and it could be a shared service across credit union industries, which is part of the ways that they operate now. That seems to have a lot of promise. So we think blockchain has a lot of good capabilities, and it's worth exploring. And very much like to invite everybody and legal hackers that's interested in doing prototypes or in joining open source projects. This is the only time we do it, law.MIT.edu, to come to our site and to sign up and hack with us, hack the law. Thanks.
Hi, so I'm a lawyer. My name is Preston, and I'm the COO of Paris Industries. And so what we did is we looked at very briefly. When you're running an application of any kind, ultimately what happens is there's a person sitting at a computer looking at an interface in a web browser, and that is the same as all the 2.0, blockchain applications that are being built now. So the question is, how are they different? The answer is because you have a database which is doing the same thing in multiple different places at once without running anyone's method. And then everything from there, you just go and say, all right, well, what do we want to use this for? So we looked at it and we said, well, that sounds a lot like, for anyone who's a transactional lawyer, that sounds a lot like a deal. That sounds a lot like what happens when you sign a bunch of contracts. Those then govern things that are supposed to happen, over the course of the life cycle of relationships. So that's what we do. Basically, the platform, quite agnostic. There are many different blockchain designs out there. They have features, they have characteristics. And our stuff, which is all open source, the objective is to allow a developer who is a lawyer or anybody else to take this technology and then harness it and then apply it to solve a business process issue. I'm not going to go into that too deeply because that is the expertise of our head of, not just of the developer, but our head of legal engineering. I think we're the only company. Sorry. Yes, so I think we're the only software company in the world that has a legal engineering department, and that's the
Thanks, Preston. I'm Nina Kilbride. I'm also from the great town of Raleigh. And when I discovered blockchain, what I saw in it was evidence. I've spent 18 years as a commercial litigator. And as Preston said, I saw deals. I saw the building blocks of deals, how we put them together after deconstructing the relationships that go into a deal. So my job is to figure out how to take this new tool, it really did not exist before, a reliable way to give us an interoperable system and build workable commercial and legal relationships with it. And that requires us working in a team of developers and legal minds who can understand not only how are we going to make a technical application work, but how we are going to understand all of the context around it, issue spotting, and make sure that your use case is fit for purpose. And from that, we have the ability to build a lot of new and reimagined kinds of legal tools. And when I'm talking about blockchain potential to lawyers who aren't technical at all, when I try to explain the import of this new invention of blockchain technology, I heard somebody else talking today about we're opening up the West. I see that same thing. What we are looking for is an interoperable set of rules that can go across jurisdictions. And who can do that? use volume 6 that has rattled around in my car for 20 years, and that's the UCC, an algebraic breaking down of commercial systems and rules, reflecting arm's length best practices. How can we build it like that? And that's what we're working on here.
And you can just hang on. Is this mic working? Yes. Okay, supposedly it's working.
But it's working for me, so that's the thing.
Oh, so I said, yeah.
Yes, everybody else.
I'm not gonna say much. I can just
Everybody
yell.
else, you like to do.
Now we're gonna switch and you guys can pass the microphone around wherever you want to. And I wanted to address a few subjects. And the first one is just a basic question, real simple one, is what is a blockchain good for? I've heard deals that it's good things, it could be good deals or it could be good for former credit union. What characteristic, if you've got a legal situation or even societal situation, would a blockchain be effective or useful for? And maybe even more enlightening, what just wouldn't work on the blockchain? Should I put my will on the blockchain or you know, what doesn't work with it, what does it not work with?
I'll give you a really boring answer, is that I was talking to a potential customer today, and we were talking about some financial process that was streaming. And the conversation basically went, didn't require too much pitching. It was like, look, this is what's going to happen. They were very much at the beginning of their journey of mapping out what use cases they have, blah, blah, blah. He said, look, this is how it's going to pan out. Even I know this. You're going to spend 3 months working with a consultant. They're going to take internal business processes that you have, to show all of the events, all of the message passes. I'm sending a file, getting a confirmation back, what I want to receive, and then I want to confirm that I received that confirmation, and which one sent me, and blah, 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 blah. No, that doesn't happen. So what you do is you take these 20 steps process and then you collapse it. And so that's pretty much, and then you have an IT infrastructure where you can stand it up and face it to whatever other APIs or bank or other institution that you're using. So you can pay for it. So blockchains are reconciliation engines. Bitcoin, fundamentally, that consistent answer of what it is a reconciliation settlement engine. It's a robot, or not a robot, but automaton does that, and it collapses that process. That's my exploring commercial finance version.
I'm inspired, however. Have you ever done any payment network or payment network stuff where dealt with reconciliation and settlement at the end of the day? You would find that inspirational. It's painful and just what a waste. Enough. So I think if you looked at what are the underlying capabilities that that make possible the reconciliation and settlement collapsed in a few steps, what it is basically is you've got a single unified record that you can look at, so you don't have to fuss around between all the different players, showing what you was, how much I do, how much you owe me, or what were the transactions, and somehow informing those things. Because you've got one record, that's great. So another thing that's good for is when you only have one party that's trying to communicate to another party, so you're not even reconciling. That happens all the time with constructive notice. And so if you look at the time when we require legal notices to go out, but you don't necessarily know the address of the other party, or they're avoiding you, you can put them. Or if you're trying to make it so it's fair and everyone can know it, like a procurement, or if there's a safety thing like a car recall. Lots of times we don't necessarily get to personal notice, but we need legal notice. We're going to bulldoze a house, we're going to refab the city. So right now we put in newspapers of general circulation as though that is real anymore. It is not. And blockchain, by contrast, because of what I mentioned before, the massively distributed nature of the architecture of how the blockchain technologies work, is a perfect place where you can not just evidence a transaction, but evidence a notice of for example, a procurement. So I've been told, Professor Lupino and I talked and asked him a few moments ago that he'll be having something like a hackathon in October for the New York City record. That's the record of all procurements and things like that. That every city has such a thing, every state. There's the Federal Register. This is a common need in the public and the private sector to be able to put others on notice of things at large in a public way, the publicly verifiable capability of the massively distributed global and freely available blockchain is the perfect match for this core, like, eternal
and slow. But the trade-off of that is it's immutable. It's unhackable. You can't take it down. So you have to think about it in those terms. I think abstracting what is a reason why you would go for a blockchain. I think about if you have two parties who each have their own goals, but they want to work together. They don't share any infrastructure. Blockchain becomes that shared infrastructure. The two parties can maintain their own goals and work together and not have to trust each other.
I wouldn't use the word unhackable, given recent events.
So I would add to that one thing that I know blockchains are not good for, and that is non-deterministic discretion. A lot of times in contracts, we want to bake in the ability to humanly make up our mind later. That's not really one of our more appropriate applications. And so the idea that sometimes in the hype machine will tell us blockchain is going to take over the world, you know, we as lawyers know that there are a number of things that are not if-then conditions. But then we have that gigantic swath of legal commerce in the middle that really does ideally run on if-then and documentary conditions. And those are the ones that are most appropriate for blockchain applications.
There's one other, it may not, I think this should be tested, but it may not be good for just one single internal enterprise system. There may be much more performant ways, and it just may not be requirements that satisfies when you're doing IT or other processes in one individual system. When you start networking across multiple systems, even in a payment network where you're doing reconciliation and settlement, where people do know each other, that's hard enough. We're talking about parties that may not trust each other, maybe in local commerce, UCC, and other trade or communications networks where by design people don't already know each other, and yet we want a common method to trade, transact potentially something or another. That seems to be the sweet spot. But even that should be tested. I mean, maybe it is still better for lots of individual internal systems that you can just want to unwind what happened later, perhaps. I think that's the current wisdom is if you're an individual, like single node that doesn't connect with anything else, that's not the right fit.
Unless you're trying to prevent a sequel.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, go ahead.
About the payments, what about then, say, mobile payments? Or using a mobile phone to make payments using a console way. Would it be a good thing to use there?
Yes.
Repeat the question.
Yes, no.
The question was, would blockchain be good in, say, underbanked or unbanked places, say, like developing nations potentially, where right now there's some mobile phone uptake of seems to be desired. I think the answer is yes, it appears that way. It hasn't yet been demonstrated, but MIT has something called the Digital Currency Initiative, which is working very closely with this group going on in Mexico and then obviously Kenya, doing some microfinance, and there's a lot going on in Mexico right now, and there's a bunch of systems that we're collaborating with to see, to test whether or not we can reduce the cost and extend the reach, and also get into de-risk it more. But the one thing that's great about it is you can encapsulate any type of value you want to just $1 peso or $1, €1, or other things. So we're looking at some of these other systems that have loyalty points or have a type of currency between like the agriculture and something else, or the trading points back and forth. It's a really good fit for those types of economies. Time banks is another in developing nations where we're starting to prototype something where you put an hour in, you get an hour out. There's some great communities where that's very, very efficient, as a matter of fact. And right now they're using like Excel best in some of the ones I've seen. And then there's inevitable disputes, among people with goodwill, but they're great at record keeping in these more informal systems, informal economy. So you have to live in the value in a publicly verifiable way. Could they be like really ever that much closer to the potential? So they don't have to think about that.
Okay.
I mean, in
the short, think about instruments. You know, I imagine state law, like all the law school exams for registration, probably law things around first and second orders and things like that. What do you see sort of maybe in the U.S. context is entering back to traditional?
Maybe you're clapping your hands.
That's me.
That or error on the other, sort of like whether or not public or private changes.
Yeah, would you repeat the question, because I'm not sure I understand now.
So if we want to replace, for example, public registration in that process with a sort of blockchain sort of model, I can imagine a state law mortgage is going to be registered with blockchain title. That debt instrument then is authoritatively sort of registered, so it's funded through that blockchain title that would be publicly exposed. But you can imagine with private ones, it looks more like sort of error bond sort of problem where that sort of anonymity and sort of chain of title might be more of a question of traditional law. I don't know, another area of practice, but I'm just thinking fair bonds are bad in the U.S.
Well, again, if I understand your question, yes, I see there's every bit of the potential to interface with public registries, things like liens on title that go on to a blockchain for our chain of title and authority. As to whether we get into questions like Daza was talking about, as to whether you want to have your blockchain configured in certain ways for certain use cases. And I really think there isn't a big broad answer to that. And there's going to be a multitude of chains with a multitude of kinds of different rules because they have a multitude of evidentiary needs. Does that answer your question?
If I have a blockchain registered mortgage, is that 5 years out, 50 years out, 20 years out?
That's 12 months.
In Virginia.
That's 12 months.
So,
So if you remember, these things are not, people talk about blockchains and abstract.
it's not.
So you're not talking about blockchains, the abstract, it's super fucking annoying. So I'm just want to repeat it. So just, and remember, these things are applications built to serve a purpose for something. So if you wanted to have a blockchain mortgage, it wouldn't be, you don't have to structure it like Bitcoin where suddenly it becomes a bearer issue. You can turn around and say this is a process automation tool for the town, for the county of Middlesex, Connecticut, which is designed to automate the process of title searching and reduce the time from and cost from $2,000 a week to 5 seconds free. So, but again, then you're just like, okay, what's the code for this application? How do I, how do we optimize it? So it's not you're not pinned down into the Bitcoin style way of looking at the world, which I think is horribly corrupt. It doesn't really work. You are totally at liberty to express in the solidity contract language anything that you can write. So you can make it totally, with discretion, you can register as vindicated with that. And then it's just a question of what the docs say and whether the blockchain knows.
There's something else too, very quickly. Like, so you said in Virginia at the end, the question for those in TV land in the future was, would this be appropriate for bearer instruments, for example, or other things? I think the answer also is, I said, you said 5 years out, 10 years out. That's part of what we addressed, which is, well, you could make it 12 months out. You guys sitting in the chair right there looking at me, who asked the question. In Virginia, I talked with the Division of Banks and talked with Tim, that did come up with a statute down there for electronic notarizations and so forth. Like, there's people with names that could apply the requirements for the registrations in that state to a pilot and could incorporate it into a bill. And there's a lot you can do just by private agreements. In fact, by like a executive order or by Division of Banks indicating under the statute they're interpreting ABC right now, for example. So I take some initiative with, I think what the folks from Eris were getting at when they were saying you can apply the technology. Give us some functions. It's a very supple type of capability that you can apply with software programming in different ways. You need the authoritative parties to come together to agree and then to actually have that thing. encourage you to do, if people were into it and want to apply the tool that way, it could happen quickly. I think.
I think I'm getting the time signal. We're about getting near. It's time to wrap up. I'd like to thank all of you for appearing. And I assume most everybody will be around later this afternoon. Pin anybody down and ask any further questions. It's a complicated subject, and it's hard to cover in a short amount of time. And all of us up here probably spend days talking about it. Thank you very much. Thank you all for. I wanted to.
Do you know how to stop it? Like people probably don't want their personal conversations being taped. Was it not recording? It was. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know if he does, but I think it's probably appropriate. So, okay, sure.
And that's how that session went.